Tonight, we're stepping into the final hours of a condemned queen. But we're not going to the battlefield or the throne room. No, we're going to a cold stone cell. This isn't just a story about an execution. It's about one last act of rebellion, a final word against a fate that was decided by others. This is the story of Mary, Queen of Scots' last letter, a final testament written right in the shadow of the axe. You know, to really get this letter, you have to picture the room. I mean, just imagine it. For almost 20 years, this has been her world. Stone, cold, unforgiving. It's an atmosphere that just presses in on you, a constant, physical reminder that you're a prisoner. And it's in this deep, profound cold that she has to find the words to leave one last piece of warmth behind.
So let's set the scene. We're at Fotheringhay Castle. It's 2 o'clock in the morning on February 8th, 1587. The execution is scheduled for 8. The clock is absolutely ticking. Every single second is just loaded with the weight of a life about to end, and a story about to be sealed forever. Then they give her a pen and paper. In this moment, that's not just some small courtesy. For Mary, it's everything. It is her final opportunity to speak for herself, to send a voice out into the future that the executioner's axe just can't touch. A chance to leave behind a record, not just a body. So, you have to ask, how did a queen born to rule Scotland with a real claim to the English throne end up here? Let's take a quick look back at the long, winding path that led her to this very moment. Well, this story unfolds over decades. It starts way back in 1568. She flees Scotland, hoping for help from her cousin, but instead, she finds a prison. For 18 long years, she's moved from castle to manor house, a royal captive. Then, in 1586, the final chapter begins, when a conspiracy, the Babington plot, is discovered, and that leads her cousin, Queen Elizabeth, to finally, reluctantly, sign the death warrant. The final straw? It was something called the Babington plot. It was this whole scheme to assassinate the Protestant Queen Elizabeth and put the Catholic Mary on the throne instead. And how was she caught? Espionage, pure and simple. Her secret letters, written in a complex cipher, were intercepted and decoded. In the shadowy world of Tudor spycraft, those messages became her death sentence. Elizabeth's spymaster, a man named Francis Walsingham, was absolutely relentless. Once he had those decoded letters, Mary's fate was pretty much sealed. But get this, here's a little historical footnote for you. Elizabeth, who was tormented by the idea of executing a fellow monarch, later claimed she never actually gave the final order for the warrant to be sent. And in the political chaos that followed, the original signed warrant just vanished. It was probably destroyed to protect the people involved from the Queen's anger. And that brings us back to that cold stone cell. Her fate is sealed. She knows it. With only a few hours left, what does a queen choose to say? Who does she write to? And what does she want the world to remember her for? First off, this is not a plea for mercy. No way. It's a declaration. Mary is framing her own legacy here. She's basically arguing, I'm not a traitor being executed for treason. I'm a martyr dying for my Catholic faith and my rightful claim to the throne. She is seizing control of her own story, right at the very end. And then her focus shifts. It goes from the huge political stage to something deeply personal. She's writing to her former brother-in-law, the King of France, not for herself, but for her people, her unfortunate servants. These were the men and women who had been locked up with her for years. And in her final moments, the thing that's weighing on her conscience is their well-being. And just look at how methodical she is, even now. These aren't the frantic words of a victim. These are the clear, organized final wishes of a ruler, putting her house in order. She wants prayers for her soul, a memorial mass, and charity given to the poor. But what's really important to her? Making sure the wages of her loyal staff are paid. And mixed in with all these grand concerns, there's this one small, incredibly intimate gesture. She sends 2 precious stones to the King of France. They were considered talismans, things that could protect him from illness. It's just a final token of affection, a quiet reminder of the real personal bonds that existed beneath all the crowns and the politics. So the letter is finished. It's folded, sealed. But the story isn't over, not by a long shot. Let's look at what happened after the ink dried and how this final message
And the memory of Mary herself managed to live on.
We actually have an eyewitness account from a man named Robert Wingfield, who wrote down the grim events of that morning. He noted the brutal end to her very turbulent life, but his account also captured something more, something that has lasted. Because Wingfield's account includes this, a detail so human and so heartbreaking, it has echoed through centuries. As they were preparing to move her body, they discovered that her little dog had been hiding under her clothes the entire time. It refused to leave her, and it laid down in the blood between her head and her shoulders. And just an unbelievable final act of loyalty. And what about the letter? Her voice in ink? Well, it was successfully smuggled out of the castle by her doctor and carried all the way to France. It survived revolutions, the fall of kings, passed through the hands of collectors, until, centuries later, it was finally returned to Scotland. Her words remain, preserved for all of us to see.
So in the end, yeah, power, in the form of an English executioner's axe, decided the moment of Mary's death. But memory, preserved in a letter, in an eyewitness account, in the story of a faithful little dog, memory chose what would truly last. And it leaves us with one final question to think about. When all the noise of politics and power finally fades away, what is it that truly remains?